It was a cold, rainy night. The wind was strong, and the trees outside were shaking. Inside a small wooden house, a man sat alone. His name was Daniel. He lived far from the city, in the quiet mountains. He liked silence, he liked peace. But that night, silence was broken. A soft knock came at the door. Daniel looked up from his book. He waited, maybe it was the wind, then he heard it again. A second knock, slow, weak, like someone was tired. He stood up, walked to the door, and opened it carefully. There she was. A woman stood in the rain. Her long white hair was wet, sticking to her face. Her eyes were big and glowing. Not with light, but with something. Deep, pain, hope, fear. She was not human. Daniel saw that in a second. Her skin was smooth and pale blue. Her clothes looked like metal and cloth mixed together. Strange lines moved slowly across her arms, like they were alive. But the strangest thing was, she was crying. She looked up at him and spoke. Her voice was soft, almost broken. "I know what your kind did," she said. "But please, let me in. I'm strong. I can give you strong children. Just let me in." Daniel stared at her. His mind froze. What was she saying? Was this a trick? She stepped closer. Her hands were open. She was not armed. Her body was shaking. She looked sick, or scared, or both. "Please," she whispered again. "I've come a long way. I have no one. No place. I only want a chance." Daniel didn't move. Everything in his head screamed danger. But something in his heart whispered help her. He opened the door wider. "Come in," he said carefully. She stepped inside. The door closed behind her. Rain dripped from her clothes onto the wooden floor. Daniel gave her a towel. She took it slowly, like she didn't know what to do with it. He showed her how to dry her face. "Sit down," he said. She sat. Quiet, her eyes never left him. "What's your name?" Daniel asked. She paused, then said, "You can call me Sarah." "Where are you from? A place that no longer lives." Daniel didn't ask more. Not yet. He gave her hot tea. She held the cup with both hands, like it was the first warm thing she had touched in years. "Why did you come here?" he asked. She looked at him, straight into his eyes. "Because humans are strong. Your world is strong. Your blood is strong. My people are dying. We cannot make children anymore. Our bodies are failing. So, I was chosen. To find strength, to save us." Daniel frowned. "So you want? What? To use humans?" "No," she said quickly. "Not like that. I want to join, not to steal, not to harm. I want to build something new, with someone who sees more than fear." There was silence. Only the sound of rain tapping the windows. Daniel stood, thinking. Everything felt unreal. Was she lying? Was she a weapon? A spy? Then she reached into her pocket and took something out. She held it in her open palm, a small white object. Daniel leaned closer. It was a baby tooth. "Human," she said. "From one of your kind. I found it on a battlefield. A child's tooth, in the dust. I kept it. It reminded me why I must not give up." Daniel stepped back. His throat was dry. "Why would you keep that?" "Because it was small, but strong, like hope." Daniel looked at the tooth, then at her. He didn't understand everything, but he felt something strange inside him. A mix of fear and sadness. And maybe trust. She stood slowly, her hands trembled. "You can tell your people," she said. "Call the soldiers. Lock me away. I will not run. I only ask for one thing. Please don't let them take my voice away. I want to speak. I want to try." Suddenly, a loud beep came from Daniel's tablet on the shelf. "Urgent. Alien contact warning. Female subject identified. Report any strange individuals. Do not engage alone." Daniel looked at the screen, then at her. She didn't move. She didn't beg. She just looked at him, eyes full of something he couldn't explain. Hope? Fear? Love? He turned the screen off. She sat down again, silent. Outside the storm got worse, but inside that little house, two different worlds had just taken the first step toward something big. And neither of them knew what was coming next. The fire burned low in the small room, and shadows danced on the walls while Sarah sat on the floor with her knees pulled to her chest and her eyes lost in the flames as if they held memories only. She could see, and Daniel watched her from the chair, not speaking, not asking, just waiting for her to begin. Then in a soft and distant voice, she said, "Once there was a world far from this sky, a world full of green clouds and silver lakes where people moved with grace and minds touched without words, and we lived in peace for 1,000 years. Without war, without hunger, without lies, but nothing lasts forever. One day a ship arrived from the edge of the dark. Stars it brought, fire and noise, and fear it came, not for land or gold, but for energy, the kind that only living things carry. The kind we had in our blood and our bones and our thoughts, and they drained us slowly with machines that smiled and weapons that sang like broken glass. Fought back at first, we had warriors strong and fast with wings that could tear storms. But their machines learned quickly, and soon our skies turned black, our oceans boiled, and our children stopped laughing. Then they stopped being born. The light inside us began to fade, and our bodies became thin, and our minds tired, and our wombs silent, and in secret, elders gathered and whispered of one last hope. The humans. Daniel looked at her, eyes wide and full of 1,000 silent questions. She gave a sad little smile as if she knew every one of them before he could speak. "We had watched your kind for years," she continued. "We saw you fight your own kind, destroy your forests, build towers, then tear them down. We saw hate and greed and pain, but we also saw something else, something that did not exist in our world anymore. You protected your young even in war. You held your dying mothers and fathers with shaking hands. You laughed in the face of darkness and sang when your hearts were broken, and most of all, you never stopped creating. You created life again, and again you made stories and children and fire from ash. You were violent, yes, but you were alive, and the universe fears what is alive, so they chose only one to go to your world, not as a spy, not as a soldier, but as a bridge, as a voice. And I said yes, I said I would go. I would find one human who could understand not the politics, not the science, not the strategy, but the soul." She looked at Daniel now, and he saw her hands shaking a little as if her own story made her cold, and her face was pale like the moon outside the window. "I traveled through the cold. I crossed dead zones and silent space. I saw stars die and black holes whisper, and I came here not to take, not to rule, not to conquer. I came to ask." She stood and walked to the window, looking out into the night, where rain had now turned to snow, and the forest outside was still like a painting. "When I landed, the first thing I felt was pain. Your world is heavy, it pulls the body down and the air burns the lungs." I kept walking. I followed the signals. I followed the hope. Daniel stood slowly, walking closer to her, now standing beside her but not touching, and his voice was low and careful. As he asked why, Mesh turned, and for the first time he saw something strange behind her glowing eyes, something warm and human. "Because you live alone," she said. "You do not follow the crowd. You left the city. You left the noise. You chose silence. And silence is the closest thing to truth. And maybe, I thought, maybe someone who listens to trees can listen to me." He did not answer, and the silence grew again. But this time it was not empty. It was full of weight, full of meaning. She opened her hand again and showed him something small, another object from her pocket, a silver seed, no bigger than a fingernail. "This is the last seed of my world," she said. "It will only grow if mixed with your soil and touched by your sky. If it blooms, my people may survive. If it dies, we are gone." She placed it on the table like it was gold, and Daniel stared at it, unsure what to feel, what to say. Outside, a light flashed and a humming sound grew louder from the sky, and Sarah's eyes widened. "They found me," she whispered. "They should not have found me so soon." Daniel rushed to the door and looked out into the trees where a red beam moved between the branches like a laser searching, and he turned back to Sarah, who now looked afraid in a way she never had before. She stepped closer, her voice low and shaking. "They will not ask, they will not listen. They will take me and study me and break everything. I am pleased I came for life, not for war." Daniel looked at the silver seed on the table, and then at the pay. Pleased I came for life, not for war." Daniel looked at the silver seed on the table, and then at the silver seed on the table, and then at the silvers. "I came for life, not for war." Daniel. Strange woman who had cried at his door and told him stories of stars and loss and hope, and without a word he picked up the seed, closed his hand around it, and turned off every light in the house. The night held its breath as they stood in the dark, waiting for what would come next. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Morning came with silence, as if the sky itself was holding its breath while Daniel stood at the edge of the forest staring at the horizon, and Sarah sat inside the cabin with her eyes closed and hands folded like a statue made of sorrow and stars. The snow outside had melted into mist that clung to the trees like old memories, and in the still air there was a hum so faint it almost sounded like the wind. But Daniel knew better, and his heart beat faster with each passing moment. He walked back inside, where Sarah opened her eyes the moment he touched the door, and he could see the worry hiding behind her quiet face. And he did not ask her anything because he already knew she had felt it too. "They are close," she said, not with fear but with a kind of tired acceptance, like someone who had run too long and now had no more roads to run. Daniel nodded and turned on the old radio scanner that crackled with broken voices and static, and soon a message came through, a calm voice speaking over the signal like a machine trying to sound human. "This is Earth Security Broadcast Unit 12. The alien subject has been located Sector Northeast Grid 65, male civilian contact. Confirmed. Prepare for live retrieval. Orders are to capture without damage. Repeat, capture without damage." Sarah stood up and walked to the window, and her reflection stared back at her with eyes full of storms and stars and pain. "They will come for me," she said, "but they do not come alone. They never do. There will be drones and scanners, and maybe others like me, but not with my heart." Daniel looked at her, and then at the seed still resting on the table, like a tiny piece of hope waiting for the right moment to grow, and something in his chest tightened. He picked up the seed and placed it in a small glass jar and handed it to Sarah without a word, and she held it close like a heartbeat. Then a sound echoed from the trees, something mechanical, something sharp, and the shadows outside moved like wolves made of steel. Sarah stepped back, and Daniel closed the shutters and turned off the lights, and for a moment it felt like they were alone in a world made of whispers and waiting. A soft knock came at the door, and Daniel froze because it was not loud, not angry, just gentle, like the first time, like Sarah had done just days ago, and now someone else stood where she had once stood. Daniel opened the door an inch and saw a man in a gray suit with a clear badge glowing red and a small drone floating beside his shoulders, scanning everything with a quiet hum. "Good morning," the man said, with a smile too wide and eyes too calm. "We are here to retrieve a visitor who has lost her way. Nothing more, nothing harmful. We promise cooperation ensures peace." Daniel said nothing, and the man tilted his head slightly. "We know she is here. The signal does not lie, and we also know she is different from the others, which is why we ask politely first and act later if needed." Sarah stood behind Daniel, now her voice soft and steady. "You cannot have what you do not understand," she said, and the man's smile faded. "Just a little. We understand enough to know danger when we see it," he replied, and she stepped forward fully into the light, and the drone beeped and flashed and sent signals back to the sky where hidden eyes were already watching. "Danger is what you bring," she said, "not what I am." Man looked at Daniel now, his voice calm again. "This is your home, your species, your planet. She is not from here. Her presence breaks laws of contact and safety and survival. You must choose where your loyalty lies." Daniel looked at Sarah, then at the seed in her hands, then at the trees outside where more shapes now moved, and he made a choice, not with words, but with action. He slammed the door shut, locked it, and moved quickly, pulling Sarah by the hand into the back room, where he opened the hidden trapdoor beneath the floor, and inside was a tunnel, old and dusty, once used for storms, now needed for something greater. They climbed down, and the door above closed again, and the world above grew louder with voices and footsteps and orders and scanners. But the space below was dark and safe for now. They moved through the tunnel for what felt like hours, though the sun above had barely shifted, and finally they reached the end, where an old barn waited, forgotten and quiet inside. Daniel lit a single lamp, and Sarah looked at him with something soft in her eyes. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "Because you knocked and you cried, and no one cries for lies," he said. "And because the world needs more than fear to grow." She placed the seed in the soil of a pot found in the corner and covered it gently, like she was tucking in a child. "Maybe it will grow," she said. "Maybe it will sing." Daniel sat beside her as the wind outside howled, and the future waited with open jaws. For now there was only soil breath and something close to hope. The old barn stood like a forgotten memory, hidden behind hills and silence, while inside its wooden walls, two lives rested on the edge of something they could not name, and the seed sat in the pot covered in soft soil, breathing quietly as if listening to the world above. Daniel paced slowly, his eyes on the cracks in the floor, and his thoughts tangled like wild vines as he tried to understand what had begun and what might come. And Sarah sat still near the window, looking at the light as if waiting for it to speak. "Tell me the truth," he said, suddenly turning toward her with a voice that carried more weight than anger, more weight than fear. And she turned too, not surprised, not scared, just ready. "I told you much," she answered, "but not all, not yet." "Then tell it now," said Daniel, "because I risked everything for you, and I need to know what is real and what is not." Sarah stood and walked toward him, and her steps were quiet like rain on old stone, and she raised her hand slowly and touched the side of her neck where the skin shimmered, and then a small panel opened. Like a petal unfolding, inside was light moving like water, and from it came images not of this world, not of Earth, but of metal towers, floating cities, and skies filled with purple stars. "This is memory," she said, "not a story, not a dream. This is what my eyes saw and what my soul carries." Daniel watched as the images told a tale far different from what he expected. Not just peace, not just suffering, but betrayal and silence and cold decisions made by voices too far to hear. Her people were not only dying, they were divided. Some wanted to blend, some wanted to rule, and Sarah had once stood with those who believed in conquest, not by choice, but by duty. She was trained not just to speak, but to listen, to mimic, to charm, and to gather knowledge from humans and send it home, and she did for a while with silent signals and hidden tools, and every secret she collected made her colder. But then one day she found something she did not expect, not a weapon, not a machine, not a plan. She found a child was alone near a broken ship, playing with stones and singing to himself, and she watched him. Without understanding why, her heart began to hurt. He looked at her with no fear, only curiosity, and handed her a drawing made with dust and light, and she took it, and for the first time she forgot to send a signal, and that moment changed everything. She told her superiors the mission was failing. She asked to return. They refused and warned her not to break protocol, not to feel, not to think, just to gather and report and survive. So she ran. She erased her signals, burned her tools, and fled into space with only the seed and a memory of the child who had smiled at her without fear. Daniel looked at her, now his hands clenched, not in anger, but in disbelief. "So you were a spy," he said, and Sarah nodded. "I was a spy, but now I am only a voice without a flag, without a people, just a voice trying to speak." Daniel walked away, breathing slow and deep, trying to fight the storm inside him, while outside real thunder rolled over the hills, and the barn creaked like it too carried the weight of truth. "You should have told me," he said. "You would not have believed me," she replied. "Maybe not, but I would have known what I was risking, and now I do not even know if they are still coming for you, or for me, or for both." Sarah stepped closer, her voice low and broken. "They will come for me always, but now they come faster because I carry shame, and those who break the line are punished without mercy, and I chose to break it. Daniel sat down, rubbing his face and thinking of the message from the drones, the men in suits, the red lights in the trees, and now this, the truth that tasted like ash. But he looked up at her and saw the light in her chest, still open, still glowing, and the image of the child, still floating there, quiet and strong. You still have that drawing? He asked. She nodded and showed it again, a simple shape of a tree and a star and two figures holding hands. He stared at it, and then at the seed, and then at her, and something inside him softened just enough. Maybe you were a spy, he said, but now you are something else, and maybe that is enough for me. Sarah smiled a small, fragile smile and sat beside him again, and the silence returned. But this time it was not heavy, it was soft like the calm after a storm outside. In the sky another drone passed by, but did not stop, and inside the barn, two hearts beat together in a rhythm. Older than war, older than planets, older than lies, and beneath the soil the seed shifted just a little, as if it too was listening. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The morning sky turned red as if the sun itself was warning them, and birds did not sing, and no wind moved through the trees, and inside the barn Daniel was already awake, watching shadows stretch across the floor, while Sarah slept with the seed beside her, wrapped in cloth like a newborn dream. He'd not slept, not really, only closed his eyes for a while, and listened to the silence, and thought of choices that had already changed everything, and of the sound he had heard just before dawn. A low hum in the distance, slow and rising. Sarah opened her eyes as if she too had heard the sound, even in sleep, and her body tensed before her mind even spoke, and she stood quickly and looked toward the ceiling where dust fell like snow with each pulse of the noise. They are coming, she whispered, not the humans, not the Earth soldiers. These are my own, and they have tracked my path through space, through time, through fear, and now they will not ask. They will not wait. Daniel moved fast, grabbing a small pack of supplies and his old coat, and he tossed her a pair of worn boots and pointed toward the trapdoor. Run now, he said, because there is no one else and no one coming, and this is our world now, like it or not. She followed without a word, and they slipped into the tunnel just as a sharp beam of blue light cut through the barn roof like a knife through smoke, and the walls shuddered like bones beneath thunder. They moved through the tunnel quickly, without light, only memory guiding their feet, and when they emerged on the far side of the hill, the sky had already changed again, turning silver with clouds that twisted in unnatural ways. A ship hovered above, the trees wide and silent like a predator waiting to strike, and smaller crafts moved beneath it, scanning the forest with lights that melted branches and boiled snow. Sarah touched the earth with her hand and whispered something in her language, and a soft pulse moved through the ground like a wave, and the ships paused, as if confused by the signal. We have a few minutes, maybe less, she said. They are listening but not hearing. They are watching but not feeling. They will find us again soon. Daniel nodded, and they ran through the forest deeper and deeper until the trees became thick and the ground soft with moss and fallen time, and the air smelled like wet iron and old life. They found shelter in the ruins of an old military outpost, now overgrown and forgotten, and inside the stone walls they caught their breath and listened to the silence again. Daniel looked at her, and for the first time he saw real fear, not for herself, but for something else, something distant and precious. What will they do if they catch you? He asked. They will erase me, she said, not just my body but my voice, my memories, my truth, because I broke the line and chose to feel. Daniel sat down beside her and handed her a piece of bread, and she took it slowly like it was a gift from another world, and maybe it was. They ate in silence, and outside the ruins, the wind returned, whispering secrets only the wild could understand. You no, they will not stop, he said, not the humans, not your kind, not anyone, because no one likes what they cannot control. She looked at him and smiled a small, tired smile. Then we do not stop either. Daniel stood again and pulled out a small device from his pack, an old radio. from his time in the service, and he tuned it slowly until static gave way to a voice soft and broken. Emergency alert, all units grid 70 marked red, possible non-human presence, no confirmation, search in progress, priority level increased, civilian. Daniel Harlow listed as missing, presumed in contact, approach with caution, possible contamination, possible alliance. Sarah listened and then looked at him. They think you are lost. No, he said, they think I have chosen. And have you? She asked. Looked at her and then at the forest and the sky and the path they had taken, and nodded yes. I have. She touched his arm gently and said then, I am not alone. From the sky came a new sound, deeper and older, and Daniel knew this was not human-made, and Sarah's eyes widened. Another ship, she said. Not mine, not Earth, something else, something old. They are here not for me, not for you, but for the seed. Daniel reached into her pack and pulled it out, wrapped in cloth, still warm, still alive, and he held it tight, as if it might fly away then. We run again, he said, not just to escape, but to protect this, not for us, but for what might come after they left the ruins without looking back, and the forest swallowed them again, and the sky cracked open, and fire fell from the clouds, not to burn but to search, and voices spoke in metal tongues across the mountains, and in the silence between steps, between breaths, between heartbeats, something new was growing, not just the seed, but the idea of a future, no longer built by one race or another, but by both together, a future running through the dark toward the light. Asterisk. The sky above them roared like a beast, without form, and the trees bent as if they too wished to run, while Daniel and Sarah moved through the smoke and the snow, their breaths heavy and fast, and their minds filled with everything they could not say. Behind them the lights chased in slow waves, not like fire but like questions hungry for answers, and above them a second ship descended, smooth and black, like a shadow cut from the night itself, and no voice came from it, only a feeling heavy and cold. Sarah stopped, her steps halting near an old river frozen in place like time itself, and Daniel stopped with her, his eyes searching her face for something he could not name. They are here, she said, not my people, not yours, something else, something old, something from before rules were made, before peace or war, something that watches when stars are born and waits when they die. Daniel looked at the ship as it landed without sound and opened like a flower blooming in reverse, and from it stepped a being, not tall, not short, not light, not dark, just there, and yet not, and its eyes held no color, only questions. You have broken the line, it said in a voice that came not from its mouth, but from the air itself, and Sarah lowered her head. I have chosen, she said, and the air around them pulsed like a wave of thought. You were made to collect, to carry, to return, not to feel, not to bond, not to plant seeds in foreign soil, it said, and its words felt like ice moving through their skin. I was made to follow, but I became something else. She replied, I saw a world that does not ask to be understood, and I understood it anyway. The being turned to Daniel, and for a moment he felt everything he ever feared, everything he ever loved, and everything he never said, and it made him feel smaller and stronger at the same time. You are only human, it said, yet you stand here with her between the line and the unknown. Daniel stepped forward and held the seed in his hands, the cloth warm against his fingers, and he spoke not loudly but clearly. I do not know what she was. I only know what she is, and what she is matters to me, and to whatever comes next. Being moved closer and raised its hand, and from it came light, not bright, not blinding, just light, and within it appeared two paths like rivers made of stars, one red, one blue, both winding away into the sky. One is return, it said, the other is remain. Choose. Sarah looked at Daniel, and then at the seed, and then at the sky, and her voice was steady, though her heart was not. If I return, my people will spare this world, but I will not be myself again. They will take what I know, erase what I feel. They will silence the part of me that found meaning in the sound of his voice, in the soil of this earth. If I remain, they will send more. They will burn forests and cities and names and call it justice, and they will never stop. Daniel looked at the paths, and then at her, and he reached for her hand without thinking, without fear. We find another way, he said, not return, not remain, but resist. We run not away but forward, we protect the seed we planted somewhere no one can find, and we let it grow in peace. Being watched them, and the lights above shimmered and changed, and for a moment all the world seemed to hold its breath. Then it lowered its hand and the paths faded, and it stepped back into the ship and closed the flower of shadow around itself, and rose again into the sky without fire, without sound. Zara fell to her knees, not from pain but from release, and Daniel knelt beside her, his arms around her, as the snow returned quiet and soft. "You chose me," she said, and he nodded and whispered, "I always would." They stood again and walked into the forest, deeper than before, into places where no map reached and no signal followed. And they found a cave beneath the roots of a tree older than cities, and there they made fire and shared stories and waited for the right season. When spring came, the seed opened, not with force, not with noise, just quietly, like truth growing from silence. And in the light of that first bloom, they knew the world had changed above them. Ships still searched, and eyes still watched, and dangers still breathed, but none could take back what had already begun, a new beginning, shaped not by orders or codes or blood, but by choice. And deep in the soil, where roots curled like fingers, the seed whispered back, asterisk, 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 asterisk. Years passed like falling leaves, slow and quiet, and the world changed in ways no one could count. While above the clouds, the sky kept secrets, and below the roots grew deep and strong without asking permission, in a quiet valley hidden by old mountains and protected by trees that touched the clouds, there stood a home made of stone and glass, warmed by fire and silence, and within its walls, laughter echoed, the kind of laughter that only comes from life after storms. Daniel stood in the garden, his hands dirty with soil and his back tired from work, but his heart full as he watched her run through the tall grass, chasing butterflies with arms wide and eyes full of wonder. She was small, not weak, her skin soft and light with a shimmer beneath the surface, and her hair dark like her father's, with streaks of silver that caught the sun like stars. And when she laughed, the birds seemed to answer. Her name was Lyra, and she was not just a child, she was something new, something born from two stories once written on opposite pages, now joined into one. And when she spoke, the wind seemed to listen. Sarah came from the trees, carrying berries in a woven basket, her steps light and sure, and her eyes still glowing, not with power but with peace. And Daniel met her with a smile that needed no words. They sat beneath the tree where the seed had first been planted, and now it stood tall, its leaves glowing faintly, even at night, and its branches shaped like hope reaching for the sky. "She grows fast," Sarah said, watching Lyra spin in circles, singing a song she had made from rain and fire and earth. "Because the world grows with her," Daniel replied, and they sat in silence watching their daughter dance with sunlight. But peace does not sleep. Forever and far beyond the valley, machines still whispered in orbit, and signals moved like rivers through space, and somewhere in the cold silence of the stars, eyes still opened with purpose. One night, while the fire crackled and Lyra slept with her hand curled around a book filled with drawings, a sound came low and distant like thunder without storm, and Daniel stepped outside, his hand near the old rifle he had not used in years. In the sky, a single red light blinked once, then again, and Sarah joined him, her face calm but her voice filled with knowing. "They found us," she said. Daniel looked at her and then at the house where their daughter dreamed, and he felt no fear, only choice. "Let them come," he said, and Sarah nodded, but it was not a fleet, not an army, not even a drone that came down from the clouds, but a figure cloaked in silver, walking slow and alone toward the edge of the field where the strange tree stood tall and quiet. Lyra woke without reason and walked outside, her bare feet soft on the grass, and she looked at the figure without blinking, and the figure stopped and lowered its hood, revealing a face with eyes like Sarah's but colder, older, distant. "I am not here to harm," the voice said. "I am here to see what became of the broken line. Sarah stood behind her daughter, her body still but ready, and Daniel joined them, both a family made not by fear, but by promise. She is what became, Sarah said, and the figure looked at Lyra, who tilted her head and smiled. "Are you my aunt?" she asked, and the figure blinked as if confused by such a simple question. "I suppose I am," the voice said, and for a moment, something like a smile touched the edge of her lips. She touched the tree gently, and it pulsed beneath her fingers. And she whispered something in a language older than stars, then turned and walked back into the mist without demand, without warning, without threat. Lyra watched her go, and then turned to her parents, her eyes shining. "She will return someday," she said. "Not to take, but to learn, and I will teach her." Daniel lifted her in his arms and kissed her forehead, and Sarah wrapped her arms around them both, and above them the stars shifted just slightly as if making room for something new. Time moved on, and stories were told across galaxies of a girl who was both human and not, who sang to machines and healed the soil and brought fire to those lost in cold. They called her many names: speaker of roots, dancer of the edge, daughter of two worlds. But to Daniel and Sarah, she was only Lyra, the child who laughed in sunlight and slept with dreams bigger than any planet, and who grew not in fear but in love. And the seed that once lay hidden in a cloth became a forest, and the forest became a refuge. And in that place, two worlds that once feared each other became one. And high above in the sky, where the ships still passed and the signals still wandered, a new message began to spread, simple and quiet like a whisper in spring. Hope is not a weapon. Hope is not a lie. Hope is a child, and she lives. Asterisk, 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 asterisk.